Welcome to season 4 of the Be Your Own Kind podcast. I am so excited to share some new ideas and experiences with you and also introduce some more wonderful and fantastic people on the platform. Be sure to visit our site, www.beyourownkind.com, to be able to keep up with the latest news and the latest blogs and content. Also, we have a Facebook community that involves giveaways, touch base, and exclusive deals. If you like the content, be sure to tip your girl a matcha tea on Ko-fi, located at ko-fi.com/be-your-own-kind-24. Thanks again for your continued support and enjoy the episode. Hi, Lisa. How are you today?
I'm great, thanks. Thanks for having me here. I'm so excited.
Yes, thanks for being here. Thanks for being here. I was on your website and I looked at the bio and information that you provided to me. I'm so excited for us to get into some things. But before we do, can you let the audience know a little bit about you?
Yeah, so Elisa Boogaerts. I'm the founder of Inspiration by Elisa. I'm a certified health coach and life coach, and I specialize in confidence. So I work with people. I guess I really just want to empower people through self-confidence to make positive change in their life, and so they can just be happy. And my passion is really to help them confidently be themselves and put themselves first, so that they can go after whatever it is that they want in their life. And so I'm all about self-confidence and self-love. And throughout the years, I've developed this huge toolkit of different ways in which to increase your self-confidence that helped me achieve my own goals. Because people have said to me, they're like, oh, you're confident, how do you do that? I remember thinking that once. I was like, how? I don't know. So I created something called the confidence method, and it's like a 10-step system that takes you through this whole process. And so at the end of it, you should be super self-confident, and you can take that next step in life, and even help people with that if they have something, sort of an inkling of something that they want to do. Or maybe they're not quite sure what it is, or they do know what they want to do, but they don't really have the confidence in which to do it yet.
Right.
So in order to take that kind of step, then I can help them with that as well, to kind of take those first few steps and really step into their power and their self-confidence to just go after what they want. Yeah, because there have been some times where I've talked with people and I've asked them, well, what do you want out of this? Or what do you want to do? And they haven't been able to answer it. They're like, oh, I don't know. And I know that I've had that in my own situation as well, where someone asked me that question once and I was completely stumped. And I was just like, so I don't want anybody to ever feel that way. And I don't want anybody to feel stuck, or maybe even secretly stuck, right? Because sometimes we feel like, what do I have to complain about in my life, but I'm still unhappy, so they kind of keep it hushed, or even just outright miserable in their life. And so I want to, kind of made it my mission to help people go after what they want with confidence.
I love that. It's not even alarming to me that a lot of people don't know what they want, and I think that comes from following the blueprint of whatever, I guess, someone set for you, and then you reach a certain age and you're like, I don't want to do that thing anymore. So I'm wondering if that's why you targeted 30s people, like individuals in their 30s and their 40s, because I feel like I reached that point in my 30s, like, I don't want to do this. I want to do this, So was that part of your decision for choosing it as your target audience?
Yeah, well, I think that's when I started in my journey too. And actually, I was having a conversation with someone, and they actually said that. I was a psychologist, and she said that that's usually when you get into your 30s is when you start to do that kind of more transformational type work. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, that's perfect. Yeah. So I think that's when we kind of start to step into that and really, really question, am I doing what I want? Is this really me?
Yeah, because I felt like I was on autopilot during my 20s. It was fun and stuff, but I think I was just like, okay, graduate, okay, go back to school and graduate again. And, okay, get married, things like that. And then when I hit 30, I'm just like, ooh.
Yeah, right?
I don't like that career. Go back to school, so. Yeah,
we just tick these boxes of life, all the things that we should be doing, right? The shoulds. And sometimes we just kind of on autopilot. I had the same thing in my 20s. It was something I really wanted to go traveling and explore the world. Then I had it. And I was at like my friend's birthday party, and we're in her living room, and she brings out her photo album of her second backpacking trip. And I noticed that I felt a little bit jealous and also a bit sad, because it was something I'd wanted to do for so long, and I had it, and this was really the first time I thought about it and really gave myself permission to do what I wanted, because by then I owned an apartment, I had a new car, I had a full-time job, I was like, I can't leave. It was I think I was 23. And and but I was secretly miserable. I had nothing to complain about, but I did not I wanted to go traveling. I wanted to explore the world. And so I did actually give myself permission. I went with a friend. It was supposed to be a 4-month backpacking trip with her in 3 countries. I ended up living abroad for 11 years. Yeah. And in that 11 years, I traveled about 37 different countries and lived in 3. Yeah, I went a little crazy with it.
No, you went all out. I love that. I'm going to change the subject for a minute. What were some of your favorite countries that you visited or lived in?
So I lived in Amsterdam in the Netherlands, which I still love to this day. I lived in London, England. My favorite, I loved Italy. Definitely, that's one of my favorite countries. Peru, I also really, really loved. I think those are my top 2 of the ones, all of them that I've traveled. Yeah, because it was so easy, living in Europe. You could the countries were so close, right? You could just hop on a train and go check them out over a long weekend or something, see the different cities. And yeah.
That's nice. I love that. And I also love the fact that you said, give yourself permission. You have to invite yourself in your life. I feel like we said earlier about in your 20s, you have all the influence, in your life, but you're on the outside looking into your own life. So, and it's weird to even think about that, but that's how it is. And I feel like when you invite you into yourself and tap into who you are, I feel like that's the base and the foundation of the confidence journey.
Yeah, so. Absolutely. Yeah. And I remember thinking at that time, being like, is this it? I got the full-time job and I got these things and the husband's going to be next and then kids. And I was like, oh, but what about all the things that I want to do? When am I going to pursue those? Now's the time. I'm giving myself permission to go after it.
Yes, I love that. So I know you are the confidence guru, and I signed up for this, guys, by the way, but she has the 4 C's of confidence email series going on, and I'm so excited to get those emails and click on those videos. But can you give us can you just break down the 4 C's for us?
Yeah, they're commitment, courage, cultivate, and continuum. So first it's about committing, you know what you want and really sort of committing to that, and then building the courage. So I give you some tools of how to do that, because sometimes, fear can really get in the way of things or whatever it may be that kind of holds you back a little bit. And then, and then take those learnings and really cultivate what you want and also break through challenges. And then the continuum is okay, now that I'm feeling confident in myself, I'm going to let it keep flowing, and where am I going to take it? Where will I go? What are the next steps?
I love that. Now, the first step is probably the hardest one, commitment, right? Because you said something very important. What do I want to do? So the last couple of interviews I've had on the podcast, we're talking about knowing your why. That is the motivator of what you want to do. But what about those that they don't have any answers to any of the who, the what's, the hows? How can they get started on this journey?
Yeah, even figuring out what their why is that what you mean?
Yeah, just figuring your why. If that's the first step, and they're having issues with that, how can they get through that? How can they have that moment?
I would say journaling really helps with that. I really like that idea. And also even just asking that question to yourself. What do I want? Because our brains are these amazing machines that will want to find the answer for you. So if you ask yourself a question and then just, kind of just sit on it, and the answer will come to you when it comes to you, because your brain's going to be like, what do I want? Do I want? Like go into like the computer system and find it for you. Or sometimes I've done that even with like, why do I do this thing? And then like a week later, I'll be like, oh, that's why. It'll come back to you. So I think that and then like don't put so much pressure and like relax with it. So I think if you're stressed out about something or you're kind of like worried about it or you have to find the answer, or you're putting pressure on yourself, then you're in a bit of a stress state. And when we're in a stress state, we don't think as clearly, our creativity doesn't flow. So if you can kind of relax and just know that the answer will come at some point. And yeah, journaling really helps because you can get really good perspective as you write, because our brains move faster than our hands do. And so sometimes as you're just like, you could just start with it. Like, what do we want? Be like, I have no idea. Like, maybe I would like this. And that's sort of how you could just start writing. And eventually like your brain will kind of think of things. And as you're writing slower, you'll be like, oh yeah, maybe that's it. And just keep on writing. And I think that's kind of a good way of starting it. Ask yourself the question and maybe journal on it and just kind of see what comes up.
I love that. So Lisa, tell us about you. Like, I know we kind of brushed through it, but tell us your like part of your personal journey. I'm gonna tell you to everybody be all in your business, but what was that moment where you realized, hey, I'm not that confident in me, like, and then the journey after that revelation?
Well, I think the very first time was that traveling and wanting to go backpacking and why I hadn't done it, and kind of actually going after it and doing it. And that was a bit different though, because I just ripped the Band-Aid off. I'm like, I know this is what I want. I just got to do it, So it was just like, okay, I'm committing to my friend. I'm just going to book the flights, and hitting that pay now button and just remembering that intense feeling of joy that gave me. And I was like, okay, I'm going to remember this feeling anytime that like anything or anyone gets in my way of going or any doubt comes up, right? It's like, nope, remember this feeling. It's like, this is just amazing. And then, I went traveling and lived, and actually is when I moved to London that, that's kind of where like it got really tough for me and where I really had to kind of really started my personal development journey. I just turned 30 and I've been backpacking. So I left Amsterdam, went backpacking for 7 months and moved to London. And I did it with a boyfriend, but we probably should have broken up before we even left. And we get to London and we break up. And I found myself, I didn't know anybody. So I found myself, pretty much broke because I'd been backpacking for 7 months. I didn't have anywhere to live. I didn't really know any local friends. And I was heartbroken. And that's really where I felt the weight of depression for the first time. And a friend of mine, so I had met her actually in Nepal. Traveling, and she moved to London a few months after me, and she messaged me one day being like, oh, let's go for tea. And I remember then like just lying on the couch and I just like, that means I gotta get up and shower and go outside, which I just did not want to do that, but she knew that I wasn't doing anything because I wasn't working yet, and by then I had found a place to live. And so she convinced me to meet her, and we went out to this cute tea shop, and it had like these little porcelain like cups and saucers, and it was all like cute, like comfy chairs and stuff. And we sat there, and I ordered a mint tea because it was November and it was all cold outside, and it felt like so warm in my hands, and it smelled divine. And she asked me what I wanted out of my life in London, and the relationship that I was in was an emotionally abusive one. So I hadn't been asked what I wanted in years. I hadn't really been able to think for myself much. And so I was completely stumped. I had no idea. And she talked about, well, maybe meditate on it and see kind of what comes up. And it was through that where I was able to start thinking for myself and start asking myself, like, what did I want? And like, who did I want to be, and how did I want to show up in this world? And that's kind of what started me on my development journey, because at that point, my confidence was so incredibly low. I felt like this kind of puddle of mush, and I really started to build myself up from there. I started thinking, I kind of dissected all different parts of my life, my health and my money and my career, and I was introduced to affirmations and some other personal development. And that's kind of where I got introduced to coaching as well. I just went on this like weekend coaching, and I saw the power of it. I was like, whoa, this stuff is good. And then we got to do a little practice session with somebody and I really liked it. And yeah, it was, that's kind of where it started, was there. From the bottom, where I hit rock bottom and built myself up. And that's why earlier I said about how over the years I developed all this huge toolkit, because I did it on my own.
Right.
And I bit by bit kind of learned how to do it. I grew up with the shame of getting help. It was kind of the thing you didn't really do in my family. Never ask for help, figure it out on your own.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, I was alone over there. So I just was like, oh, I can't do that. So I just gotta kind of struggle through it, really. Yeah, but then I did. And then eventually, yeah, I found my confidence again and became happy and started really enjoying my life in London. And yeah, that's kind of the confidence story. But of course it goes up and down, right?
Well,
Yeah.
that's life, right? And so your confidence is the thing I think that holds you together no matter what the ups and downs is, because you're confident that you can get through this, because you have evidence that you've gotten through things before. And even the fact of admitting that you need help is that I'm confident I am able to do this by myself. I think that instead of struggling, because I was raised the same way, it's almost embarrassing if things don't, like, I felt like I grew up on a pass fail type system. And now it's like there is no pass, there is no fail. It's just life. It's a lesson in whatever is happening. But with that mindset of pass or fail comes embarrassment, shame, guilt, like all of those things. And that does put a cloud of depression over you. And now you're not even confident in your own abilities, because you're hinging on past failures instead of just learning from past lessons. So I feel like a flip in perspective, you can still be in the same situation, but if you flip that perspective, you'll react to it a totally different way. So kudos to you, because that's a lot of work. That's a lot of work, because you literally have to dismantle all limiting beliefs, everything, and just start back up. And that's a lot of work. That is a ton of work.
Yeah, it took a while to figure it out, and stumbling and yeah, and that whole well, what do I want with this? What do I want with that? Yeah, and really, it was also, I think, figuring out who I am authentically. Who is Elisa? What does she really like? Because I realized that growing up, I lived this multitude of personas, all these little different roles, characters that I kind of played. Was any of them me? Parts of them were me, of course, but is that really who I am? And kind of, yeah, digging into that was an interesting journey. Who am I, and who do I want to be now? Where do I want to go from here?
Right.
How do I want to show up in this world? Does being the angry girl work for me anymore? No, that's not me. That's not who I want to be. Yeah, you can let go of that.
Right. Yeah, I love that, because it's not about changing who you are. It's just evolution. Just evolving. Yes. Because the core of you is amazing. You know what I'm saying? So that's how I see myself. I'm like, you're amazing, but we need to evolve on this. This is you got 5-year-old behavior in this. We gonna have to grow up a little bit. Things of that sort. Because I always ask my mom this question, and I'll ask you this: do you think we ever fully grow up?
What'd she say?
She says, in different areas. So we may be an adult in this area and still need growing in this. She said we're constantly growing to death. So she don't believe we ever fully grow up. It's always something we can level up in our lives.
Yeah, that's really smart. Yeah, that's really good. And sometimes you don't even realize. When I first started doing my coaching certifications, this thing came up being why do I need to finish every single thing on my plate when I eat, even the last grain of rice? Finish it. And I was it's this, I was what? Even if I'm full or whatever, or have one last bite, I'm oh, I can't do it. And it's almost as if I failed because I didn't finish my plate. And it's oh, that probably came from my childhood, right? Because back then, oh, there are starving kids somewhere and you should be grateful for having food on your plate, or whatever. The lecture that came with that. And yeah, it was interesting. So that was my childhood. That was me. I needed to grow up. It's okay if I don't finish everything on my plate.
Right.
stop eating when I'm full. It's okay.
It's not the end of the world. Like, once again, it's the reconditioning. And here's the thing: parents do the best they can with what they have. They do what they emulate sometimes how they were raised, And then when you get older and you kind of challenge those things, I find it tricky to not offend them and saying, when I go back to why I do things and saying, well, I did this because you did this. I'm not blaming you. I'm just saying I realize that the stem of me doing this is from this said thing. Over time, they got more understanding. But at first they was like, oh, I'm just horrible parent. I'm like, no.
My mom said that to me too.
I'm reconditioning myself. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
But we have to go back to childhood, and once again, that's perspective, because we could choose to blame our parents for everything, or we can take ownership of what happened, whether intentional or unintentional, and then what do we do with that information now? Like you said, who do I want to be today? Do I want to continue to eat every grain of rice on the plate, or do I have the self-control to say, I'm full? It's just that simple. And I feel like when we take ownership and not always pointing fingers, that's where the growth come in. Because yes, I'm not saying people don't wrong you. I don't say, but I feel like we still have a part to play. For instance, you were with the guy that was verbally abusive. You had the choice to stay or go. You couldn't control who he was. And so you're like, I don't like this, I'm gone. But you could have stayed and blamed him for whatever would have happened if you would have stayed with him. Or you just made the conscious decision of, he's probably a nice person, just not for me. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if he was nice as a person, but I'm just saying, he's for somebody else. He ain't in this thing. You know what I'm saying? And I feel like that comes from making up your mind and being confident that even though this hurts and I want this thing, I gotta let it go, because it's not going in the direction of who I want to be in the future. And first of all, I just want to commend you for that, because it's not easy in love anyway. It's not easy to leave something that you really, or a person that you really love, even when it's not suiting you, because love is tricky.
Yeah. I was recently doing a course about that, relationships, and even with the breakup and how you actually, like, what happens in your brain is so interesting, and like sort of like the chemical imbalance that happens with the breakup and why you can kind of get obsessive. And I was like, whoa, yeah. So like, love is tricky. Sure.
It is, until you start thinking about how something makes you feel. And I feel like, once again, that comes from being in tune with you. Like, it looks nice on the outside, but I'm not feeling good when I'm around you. That's even in friendships, any relationship, I was happy, and every time I come around you, so I don't know if that still has to do with confidence, but I'm just like, I just know that it's all about being in tune with yourself. And I feel like confidence is very tricky, because I feel like confidence is a mind thing.
Yeah.
And so your confidence has to be stronger than the defeatist thoughts, like the defeating thoughts that float through your head.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, Elisa, I mean, like, how do we do this?
Yes, no, 100%, yeah. Like, and it can come from so many different places. All that negative chatter in our brains. I think one very common one is this idea of perfectionism. That we need to get something perfect, and if we don't go, then I'm not going to do it. But I love to tell my clients that we are perfectly imperfect. We are all perfectly imperfect. And often we get so stressed out, right? Worrying about what other people will think, or getting something wrong, or not doing something good enough, right? And we think that if we don't get it perfect, we might get criticized.
Right.
And the thing is that if it's coming from an external, one thing to realize is that someone's going to judge you at some point or criticize you. Someone somewhere at some point is, it's always impossible, because we all have different perspectives of things. And if I do something and I think is perfect, you may not think it's perfect, because we have different perspectives. And so it's going to kind of happen. And it's likely that you might judge yourself even harder if something is not so perfect, or someone says something to you. And so what I like to, sort of a tool that I have with this, is that when a self-judgment comes up, or say like you're resisting an imperfection, or you're about to give up on something because you're worried about what someone might say, or you're not going to get it right, to really acknowledge the feelings in the moment. Like, I'm feeling this right now, get real with them. It's okay to feel it, but then also challenge them and get curious about the feelings, and then see if you can like ask if it's really true. And then if you can flip it and reframe it, kind of like we were talking about earlier, into something that's more compassionate and more positive and more loving to yourself. And this can be done by creating affirmations. I love affirmations, positive self-talk, so that next time it comes up, you can have a more positive way of speaking to yourself. So you acknowledge it, be like, hey, old thought, like that negative thought, I see you, I feel you, but now I got a new way of speaking to myself.
And that's still the first C. See, I went back there. Commitments. Because that does take practice, and it gets easier and easier and easier. Because at first, I know with mirror talk, it's like you look. Well, for me, when I first looked in the mirror and tried the mirror talk, I'm looking like, what am I supposed to say? Like, like, what is this? And then I would cry when I had to look myself in the eye. It was terrible the first couple of days. But then after a while, it's like, hey, beautiful, good morning. How are you doing? What do we got going today? Da 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 da. So for anything, it's weird at first. But I feel like having those conversations with me, it pumps me up about me. What are we going to accomplish today? What are we going to do? And I have affirmations all around me too when I have those moments. I feel like being equipped is what you're saying, like being equipped when those thoughts come, like, you're lonely. No, I'm not. I got a phone full of people, like a bunch of contacts. I can contact people all over the world. Social media, I'm never alone, so just having those, I call it emergency kit, like having that little emergency, that mental emergency kit, just so you can, stay up, and even, and I love that perfectly imperfect, because life's not perfect, and the affirmations may not always work all the time, and I may just be sad that day, and it's okay.
Yeah, and that's okay. Exactly. Yeah, this, like, all this positive self-talk, it's really life-changing. I was kind of surprised by it. Some people are sort of like, yeah, maybe whatever. But like, if we think about all that negative chatter in your head, right? Like, someone may say something to you once, but like, how many times are you going to say it to yourself? And maybe you already were saying it to yourself, maybe for years or even a lifetime, you can be saying this negative thing about yourself. And so if you start to say the positive things more often, then you're saying that you're kind of like phasing into phase out, if you will, right? You're phasing in the positive because you're talking more positive than talking negative. And I love that you said that about having that sort of inventory. I actually, before, used to, was it around that same time? I can't remember, but I remember thinking of a bunch of hilarious memories, and I wrote them down on my phone. I had a list of them, like things that would just make me laugh. And it has a little like funny story inventory. So anytime I did feel down or something really bothered me and I kind of needed a way to get out of it, I would read that, and then I would remember it, and it would completely change my mindset.
I love that. That's an emergency kit. I love that.
Yes, emergency kit. Yeah. And you're so right. The biggest tip is that you got to practice it. Because only then will you actually see the difference. If you kind of do it once, then and what I like to do as well is to create a system around it. So I have, like in my phone, I have like evening affirmations, and I have morning ones, and the morning ones, they like rotate weekly. So I have every Monday is the same one. And I change those depending on what I'm going to work on. So say like right now I want to work on relationships. So then I might put some like relationship type affirmations in there. And so they change as like whatever's happening in my life. And I'll see it when I first wake up. So set for the reminder's the same time as my alarm. And so I see it, and then I say it to myself. And then I say it to myself, while I'm in the shower, while I'm brushing my teeth, and I say it in my head to kind of like link those two things together, because then I'm thinking these positive affirmations and having like more happy thoughts, as opposed to getting up and being like, oh, I gotta work today, or I have to meet this person, or whatever, negative spiral you might be going on when you're showering and not really even realizing what you're saying to yourself. If you can do it that way and be like, oh yeah, and say the positive affirmation, it'll really just set your day right.
Yes, I love that. Have you ever seen the movie Kill Bill?
Yes.
So I use the moment where she's in the car and she's telling herself to wiggle her toe. Like the confidence in herself to walk again. I mean, it's a movie. She walked like 5 minutes later, but just to sit in the car and say, I, in reality, cannot walk, but I believe so much and I have so much confidence in my legs that they're going to walk. And she did. That's how powerful the mind is to me. And I always think of that. Even when I want to, like, I don't know, quit, I always say in my head, no, wiggle your toe. That's my code word to snap out of it. No, wiggle your toe. You know, and it's whatever works. And it may be weird to somebody else. And I said that to say it doesn't matter what it looks like to anybody else. You got to create your own emergency kit.
Yes, whatever that is, and it's yours.
Right.
Tell anybody about it.
Yeah,
what works for you.
Right, it's your thing. And then just piggybacking what you said about when you first started traveling, you said you liked the way it felt. You know what I'm saying? And so I did a meditation exercise where you were to purposely say negative things to yourself. And then they changed it and made you say positive things about yourself. And they asked you to pay attention to how you feel in your body. You know, and so it's endorphins when you are like living your best life. When you first travel, you got a taste of that. It's like, yes. And so you chase after that moment. And I think part of the problem with the confident situation is you don't know how it feels on the other side. You don't really know how liberating it feels because you're so used to being on the opposing side of it. And I love the fact that you are helping people experience what it feels like to be you, and the liberty and the lightness on your shoulders to just move forward in your purpose in your life, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that too. You're talking about that. Yeah, because sometimes you're right. We can't see it. And so another really sort of powerful thing is visualizations. You can do a future self visualization. I love doing that. Like because it came from, I don't know if it came from there, but how I knew about it first was through, it's called a mental rehearsal, and the athletes do it where they mentally rehearse, playing the game or doing whatever it is that they're doing, and they imagine themselves, like winning and doing really well and doing it perfectly and what have you. And so if we can do that, and I love to take people through this visualization and imagining themselves, they have their goal, they're living that life, they're super confident, they're doing what they want. And so you can really, like visualize it and really feel it. That's kind of a way of starting that, doing it through a visualization.
Yes. Yeah. Basically going through all the senses, whatever sense is going to help you.
Yeah.
I love this because I feel like a lot of things are missed. Like we have coaching and we have, I don't know what the other names are for them, but we have coaches out there and they're promoting you can live your best life. You can do that. But there's a lot of people like, but how? But why? But what do I need? And I feel like confidence is the foundation. That's why I was just super going through your website, because I'm like, dang, this is the foundation. If you don't have confidence, it's gonna be, you can still do it, but you're gonna be doing a lot of back and forth and toiling, with yourself. So I thought it was super interesting that you're literally at the first step. Like that's what you are. That's what your coaching is about. So how can tell us a little bit about your packages? Like what are you offering in your business?
So I offer a one-on-one coaching.
Okay.
So I have two programs. One is called Be You Confidently, and it's a 90-day program, and we do one-on-one sessions, and we go through that confidence method, that 10-step system. And we take you from start to finish, and it's all entirely based on the person, on you, and it's about really learning to confidently love yourself, and it's all about self-love and that self-confidence and really feeling good in yourself, and then also tools on how to break through any challenges that might come up, like self-sabotage, or like we talk about perfectionism or anything like that. And even I have a whole section on boundaries, how to set boundaries with people as well. Yeah, we can talk about that later if you want. So that program is all about that kind of really self-love, self-confident, really the essence of who you are and what you want to be. And then my other program is called Confidently Get What You Want. And so this mixes in a bit of the confidence method, but also is like specific on to say if someone wants to maybe work on their career or be happier at work or work on their health. And so I combine like my health program with the confidence method, and I curate the confidence method specifically on what someone might want to work on. So maybe they don't need all 10 steps, but there's a few things in there I can hear in our conversations will be like, oh, you need the perfectionism, steps, and we'll do that next session. And so it's a kind of a combination of that to help people comfortably be themselves and then start making those first steps towards whatever it is that they want to change and helping them with that change.
I love that. I love that. And how can they book with you?
On my website, there's a bookings page. I think, on the programs page, you can book a session there. So I like to meet with people for, I have like a complimentary hour session. It's called the Confident You. And we go through that. Like, what are you looking for in yourself with your own confidence? Where do you see yourself going? And like, what is kind of holding you back right now? And so even the session in itself, even if at the end we kind of realize maybe the program's not a good fit, or maybe we're not a good fit for each other, we can kind of suss that out. But at the end of it, you'll have an action and like a way forward of how you can start. That's almost like the first steps. You will have your first step to being your confident self. So I'd like to, before I ask anybody for money or anything, I like to work with them in that hour. And then if we see it's a good fit, then we can talk about which program's right. So I have a booking link on my website.
Nice. And what's your website?
Inspirationbyelisa.com. And so
Nice.
one word.
Nice.
Yeah. I want to inspire you.
Okay, so you mentioned boundaries. We are going to go back to that for a minute. So I feel like before we can set boundaries with others, we need to set boundaries within ourselves or for ourselves. So how can one go about that? Or for the first step of that? Yeah, it's like starting to set boundaries for yourself. Is that still in line with finding your why and where you want to go, essentially? Or who you want to be?
Yeah, it's getting really laser focused on what you want. And because really the only requirement for change is to want something, right? And this can take like a lot of courage. We're talking about, of course, is get really clear, really specific on what it is that you want. You could even set a time frame for it as well. And you can own it as well. You were talking about earlier about, sort of taking responsibility for things, because we're the creator of our own experience. So if you can give yourself permission and take personal responsibility for your experience, this will give you a lot of that freedom, that owning it. Yeah, so I think that it's being really clear on what that is, and then not letting anybody sway you, because it can be really, it's really healthy to uphold your own boundaries and let other people have their experience of that. It's almost like creating this little sort of like boundary bubble around yourself, and so if you can keep that within yourself, then don't let anybody like sway you off. You can really stay focused on your goals and move forward with it.
Yeah, I love that. And I think the caveat to setting boundaries is I don't want to say not being effective, but not being focused on the reactions of your boundary. Because I feel like a lot of people bend their boundaries because it makes someone else uncomfortable.
100%. Yeah. And we need to remember that it's not our fault that they feel bad, and that we are not responsible for their experience of your own change. We're not responsible for their experience. But yeah, that happens a lot. People will, because when we start to sort of make a change, some people may like try to hold you back from that, because they might feel sort of threatened by it, and they may even unconscious. It could be unconscious. They may unconsciously hope that you fail, right? And so they might make negative comments about it, and then you might feel guilty, right? That they feel bad, and then you'll sabotage yourself and your own goals and your new lifestyle, the things that you want just to be accepted by them, because we all want love, safety, and belonging. Those are like the three essence of what we want. And so when that relationship might be shifting because you're changing, it can kind of maybe threaten that relationship. And so we feel bad. So we want to still belong with those people, still be loved by them. So we're like, okay, I won't change, and kind of retreat back. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that boundary just stays. It's just dormant. But you will go full circle. That's one thing about life. So just because it didn't work out that time don't mean it won't work out the second time. Because once again, about growing up, I find that the toddler comes out of people who want to break your boundary. It's just a tantrum. It's just a tantrum. And just like with a 4-year-old, they're upset. But after a while, they know mom is not even going. We grow up, mom is not going to say yes to that because because that boundary was set. She said no on this. It's no forever for certain things. And it's like, okay, so yes, you'll have that 4-year-old toddler at first, but after a while, if they want to be in your life, I mean, you got to respect the boundaries. It's just simple as that.
Exactly. And so like a really good way of doing that is to like acknowledge how they feel and what they want, and then tell them how you feel and what you want. So that's a way of like, so it's not like an argument, you're not getting defensive or like, dealing with the tantrum. You can be like, I see you, I hear you, I get it, but this is what I'm going to do anyway. Yeah, because it acknowledged them, because then people, feel acknowledged. And also I think when you start making a change to really tell people what you're doing, like be transparent about it and tell them why it's really important to you, like the reasons why you're doing it. And I think that if you can explain that to them, they will understand more. And maybe you might need to like repeat it to them a few times. And if you can, if they challenge it, but if you can talk to them in a kind and assertive and respectful way, and explain your why, they'll eventually come around. You may need to repeat it, but they will eventually come around, I think. And like, you're right. And if they don't, then, maybe you need to evaluate that relationship.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
So here at BYOK, we have a signature question, and that is, if you could describe yourself in one word, what would it be and why?
Oh, that's a good one. I could describe myself in one word. I would say maybe. I got so many thoughts coming up. I was just thinking, actually, recently, like in my bathroom, I have a Post-it. So I did one of my, I think it's actually step 4 of my confidence method. It's called Find the True You, and it's doing this. You kind of go through this whole thing of resourcing on other people and thinking of the things, like people that you respect in your life, and like why they kind of made your list and their top qualities. And then you see if those top qualities are repeated with certain people, and then you can kind of create your own I am statements. And so I was just thinking, I'm like, what is on my Post-it? I was like, oh, there's lots of things on there. There's like, I am calm, I am independent, I'm in travel, I am confident. And I was like, which one of those is the one? So that's why I was like trying to figure out. But maybe the one that kind of stuck out is maybe independent. I'm independent. And why? I think it's because I've been working on this self-confidence for so long that I've come to that place of being like, it's okay. Like I know what I want, and I'm going to go get it for myself. And I've had friends say that, like, even when I went traveling, they're like, you just moved to Amsterdam? You just went? And I was like, yeah. Like, you didn't know anybody, you didn't have a job, you didn't have a house. You just went? I was like, yeah, I'm like, I can get a job. So it's going to be fine. Just like, what? Like, that's so brave of you. And so I feel like, yeah, maybe independent in that way, where I figure out a way to get really crystal clear on what I want, and I go after it. And yeah, and I do it on my own. Of course, I can ask for help now because I've kind of gotten rid of that shame. But yeah, really independent, stand on my own 2 feet.
I love that. And I love the fact that you do it before any type of fear or doubt come in. Like, by the time it's there, you're done. Like,
yeah. Yeah, and I'll have that feeling. I remember thinking that, like, when I was going, like, at the airport, waving by to the family and being like, am I really doing this? Like, I can't believe this is happening, but it's happening. But not letting it stop me, still doing it. It's just this, like, this is crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, that's super dope. I love that. Before we end, is there anything additional you want to let our viewers know? Any future projects or just some lasting words?
Yeah, maybe some lasting words is that change takes time. And so give it the time, and and just know, yeah, like we were talking earlier, practice it. And yeah, and be patient with yourself. And it's okay if you don't know what you want right away. You'll figure it out. And yeah, there's gonna be lots of stumbling blocks, but just know that you're fully capable and you can do it, and that it can take some time. Because sometimes you want change right now, and everything just kind of takes time. So yeah.
I love that. Being patient in the process. I love that. I love that. Well, listeners, first of all, before I talk to listeners, thank you, Elisa, for being on our platform and giving us some confidence 101 today. Like, I think it was 101, 102. You know, it was a high level. And
thank you so much for having me. It's been really fun.
Yes, thank you so much. And listeners, you know, no matter where you're at on the scale of what we said today, keep going. Just like Elisa said, be patient in the process and practice. Practice makes perfect. And speaking of perfection, that doesn't exist. So it's okay. It's okay where you're at. You are exactly where you are supposed to be. So, and until next time, be kind to yourself and to each other. Bye.
Bye.